Okay, so first up, there are a lot of partners that helped put this together, and we want to thank you. So, obviously, Bike Index, that's Bryan and Seth right here up front, and they'll get plenty of airtime coming up. Bikeworks, Cascade Bicycle Club, Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance, Seattle Bike Blog with Gore, Metier, who's graciously allowed us to use this space this evening.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. Seattle Neighborhood Greenways, Sportworks, and TiGr, the lock manufacturing company. So we want to thank you all. And where's the new laptop? Next slide. But we also want to thank Councilmember Bryan, who has really helped champion this before City Council, including having us brief him his Sustainability and Transportation Committee earlier today. And so that's the whole reason why we're here today, is to start this conversation around bike theft and indexing. And then, again, the Group Ride podcast. Who is subscribing to the Group Ride podcast? Just show of hands. Couple. Everybody should be subscribing to the Group Ride podcast, and I think we're going to get some audio from this in the future, so that'd be great. Next slide. So I'm going to do a little bit of a welcome and overview, then I'm going to turn it over to UWPD and the King County Sheriff's Office, and we'll do introductions at that time. And then Bike Index will give a quick presentation, and then I'll come back with some possible solutions. And then we'll have a Q&A for the last 20 to 30 minutes if we can get through that. And Amy Gore from Councilmember Rob Johnson's office is here to help us facilitate that. In order to ask a question, I do ask you to think about them in advance, and there are index cards up at the front there so you can write down your question and pins. And then also, if you have your own bike theft story, we have another index card there so you can write your own bike theft story so we can hear about it. So as you go through, if you have questions, go get that card and go do that. So let's talk about the issue of bike theft here in Seattle. In the last, from 2008 to 2015, the number of bike thefts reported to SPD tripled, from 494 to 1,563 from 2008 to 2015. It is a pretty big issue. But most bike theft actually goes unreported. In comparing national data sets between the FBI and the Department of Justice, there are 6 times the number of bikes that go unreported than go reported. And so if that carries over to here, that means that 26 bikes are stolen every day in Seattle, or more than one every hour. So it's a big issue. Next slide. Not only that, but it is also the fastest growing larceny crime in the city from 2008 to 2015. In 2008, it was 3.9% of larceny crimes, and now it is 11.4% as of 2015. So it is really spiking relative to other crime. This is not unique to Seattle. Portland's experiencing the same thing. You can see that their bike theft really spiked relative to all crime. It is the biggest increase in crime in their city. And then in Vancouver, they've seen bike theft get up above 3,000 bike thefts as of 2015. Really high. So bike theft is really seasonal, and so this is by month since 2008 of the spiking of bike theft that comes up each summer. The highest month ever recorded was May 2015, where a bike was being stolen, I believe it is once every 3 hours or so. It was really high. And then if you extrapolate that based off of the number of bikes that didn't go reported, you're talking about a lot of bikes during the day being stolen. This is that average over that time period by month. So you can see it generally holds true, of course, each year. So from 2014 to 2016, there were nearly 4,000 reported bike thefts to SPD, representing 3.1% of all crimes. So I want to help put that in perspective. Let's put a value first on it. Most victims report a bike theft directly to a precinct officer instead of reporting it online, which would mean that the value of the bike is over $500. So if you just take $500 to that 4,000 bikes, that's about $2 million worth of bikes reported stolen over that 3-year period from 2014 to 2016. And if you take the unreported, you're looking at more like $12 million worth of bikes. From another perspective, 3.1% of the total workforce, or the total police officers on SPD staff, would be about 45 officers. So there's 1,475 officers that SPD has. 45 officers dedicated to bike theft would be the equivalent. That's a lot of people. We're not calling for that, but that's a lot of people. So why is this a big issue? So for a thief, it is really easy to steal a bike. There's very little risk of getting caught. It takes less than 30 seconds to steal a bike, either by cutting a cable lock, not much more than that to saw off most U-locks, or to use a jack to break them off. And then the bike serves as its own getaway vehicle. So it is pretty easy. But if we go to the next slide, also over the last few years, we've really seen the rise of Craigslist and OfferUp and those sites, and that makes it all that much easier for a thief to steal their bike. And so that's why we're in the situation where we're at. There is a different scale of type of thief that you have, and so this is all this is getting at, and we need to reflect that. There's not one type of thief, there are many different types of thieves, and they have different levels of sophistication. And we can talk about that for hours, I'm sure, but we'll do that later. So there are 3 key perspectives I want to leave us with before we go and have the rest of the conversation with the other panelists. The first is, for low-income people, biking is really key. They commute by bike more than middle-income or high-income people by overwhelming margins. But often, low-income people have to save up for months to buy even a $100, $150 bike, and they're buying it, from Walmart or from a low-end small retail shop, and they're putting a lot of savings into it. But they can't afford a more expensive bike that would actually last them longer, because if they had it stolen, then they would be out and they'd have to save more and more money. It's just too big a risk for them. And some 7 to 15% of people never replace their bike. Nope, not yet. Second perspective. Much of the black market of bike theft is also mirrored within the drug economy. So you'll see, I've heard lots of stories and seen it myself, of where there'll be lots of stolen bikes outside of an RV. A police officer will look on Bike Index, see that they're stolen, and then have probable cause to do a search, find basically a meth lab, and then that'll be the prosecution, and it's a resale site. And so that connection is really key for how bike theft is working. And then the final perspective is that bike theft really significantly impacts the bottom line of bike shops. Every bike sold illegally is a bike not sold through a shop. With more than $2 million worth of bikes, or maybe $12 million worth of bikes that were stolen from 2014 to 2016, it really does hurt the industry. I know of 5 bike shops in Seattle that closed during that time. Obviously some opened here, but this does really impact the industry. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kendra Borzio of the University of Washington Police Department.
Our bike thefts in recent years, 2016 last year was our highest month, or highest year so far, with 2010. The year before we thought was our highest year was 197 so far. Since, as of April, we've had only 33. And interestingly enough, our highest number last year, our highest month was October, which is not That's not typical for us. Typically, we're looking at June and July and September and October as well. But not so much October, more September. So if you can go to the next one. Okay, where are most bikes stolen on campus? Mostly outside public areas. These are going to be during the day, daylight hours, people around. As Brock said, it takes less than 30 seconds. Many times I've seen videos where we have bike thieves with actual bolt cutters around their neck, hidden under their shirt. All they do is bend down, they cut that cable lock, and they ride off. They're also taking helmets with them so that they blend in a little bit more. And they're typically happening, we have a medical center area. Last year we were having a problem area that I'm going to talk about a little bit more, which was the Sound Transit area. But I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So once a bike is stolen on campus, these are kind of the ways that the bike can be reported. You can call in. We have a non-emergency line. You can always call 911 for a bike theft. It's probably not a high priority, I'm just being honest. But you can call our non-emergency line, or that other number up there is our business line, or you can come into the station and make a report in person. So what happens once that bike is stolen? Usually what we do, we have a report that's written, and I'll go through the steps of that. However, detectives will go through Craigslist, social media, look for places where that bike might be. So that might be OfferUp, it might be Facebook now that they have the Facebook market, Craigslist, and they'll actually oftentimes suggest to the victim to also be looking on those sites as well. If their bike is found, we'll set up a meet. Definitely make sure that the victim is not the one that's going to set up that meet. It needs to be law enforcement. If it's outside of our area, we typically, a lot of times, will at least notify local law enforcement as well. Contact is made if the seller shows up, and we'll confirm if that bike is stolen. If the bike is stolen, seller may be detained depending on the situation, and possibly booked. We also look at the fair market value, because if we decide to press charges, that helps decide what charges that we're going to be filing. So subpoenas and warrants, they're not often used in these cases. However, when they are used, they're used to get additional information regarding suspects. And you need to establish probable cause. So that's where we're probably not going to be using a whole lot of warrants in this case. A detective will write up a search warrant, a prosecutor and a judge will then review it, and then it's approved. Once it's approved, then it's sent to that online company, whether it's Craigslist or OfferUp, and it's sent on for a return of information that we're looking for. This is kind of the basic report flow process. So once a report comes in of, let's say, a bike theft, the one thing to always remember that reports are prioritized based on what other calls come in. So if we have, let's say, a burglary in progress, that's going to come before that bike theft is processed, just because it's an in progress case. The officer will write a report after he takes it. It's reviewed by a supervisor, it's approved, it's put into our records management system. If there's enough information in there, it's assigned to a detective. Then the detective will follow up. They might follow up with the victim and look at social media, look at Craigslist, look at pawn shops such as Leads Online, which I know Bike Index is now partnering with, to look to see if that bike is available anywhere there as well. Strong relationships with bike shops and pawn shops. So our relationships with pawn shops aren't very strong, and that's just because Leads Online has taken that direct communication out of the equation. Leads Online has become a very important tool for us. It's an online pawn shop registry thing that's used for law enforcement. We do have good working relationships with bike shops, and our old building was actually right next door to a bike shop. And so if we had suspicious people coming in trying to sell a bike, or we needed fair market values on bikes, that's where we went. So if we have a bike that's recovered and it's never claimed, it's held for 60 days. After 60 days, it's taken over to surplus, and surplus can then sell that bike. What we used to do is we used to hold all the bikes ourselves at our station. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources to do that anymore, and we would have bike sales at the station. Now it's sold at UW surplus. So the light rail. So the light rail opened in March of last year, and it became a little bit of a headache beginning probably, we started to see a big spike in April, June, July is when it started to become a problem. And one of our big issues was dealing with where cases were being reported. They were being reported not only to us, but to King County Sheriffs, as well as SPD. And so trying to grab all that data was almost impossible. So we really had a difficult time kind of pulling in all that data. And that data is important because it helps us decide when we're going to put extra patrols in areas, when plainclothes detectives are going to be at those bike racks, and how to deploy resources. The other thing that we've done is we've partnered with Sound Transit, with King County Sheriff's Office and SPD, and we occasionally hold meetings to deal with the bike theft issue that's thankfully slowed down over there, but also to help educate the general public as well, and to come up with new ideas on how to combat the bike theft issue over in that area. So kind of what we came up with in terms of fighting bike theft and the 3 changes I would like to see. I think it's 3 steps that I would like to see made. Mandatory bike registration at point of sale. I think this would take out part of the issue of a big problem that as law enforcement we have, which is, okay, your bike is stolen, but if it's not registered, sometimes it's really difficult to, not only if we find a bike that's possibly yours, prove that it's actually the stolen bike, but get it recovered for you. So mandatory registration would take care of that at point of sale. Purchasing better locks. I know that for 2015, one of the big things that I found was that bikes over $825, over 40% of them were locked, that were stolen, were locked with cable locks, only cable locks. Now, if you're investing in a really nice bike, why are you investing in a really bad lock? That's the question that I have. So, purchasing a better lock. And last, I think that while you're at the store purchasing that bike, you need to learn how to lock it properly. A big problem that we have is also bike theft, part theft, or bike part theft. And that's because bikes aren't locked properly. A lot of times it's the back wheel or the front wheel that's taken, and that's just because the bikes aren't locked properly.
Thank you so much, Kendra. Tom and Sheriff Schwinn.
I'm kind of a last minute fill-in, so my name's not up. Just give me a hindsight when you want to things.
Hi, I'm Tom Liu, and this is Deputy Paul Schwinn. We're with the King County Sheriff's Office. What did they say? So, Metro Transit Police is a section of the King County Sheriff's Office. And since we're in the yellow shirts, we are in the Bicycle Enforcement Infantry Squad, or affectionately known as the Bees downtown. So, this is the territory that we cover downtown. We go from the waterfront up to Capitol Hill, and then from the stadiums up to Queen Anne. So, one of the questions that was posed to us is our relationship with other agencies in the area. The King County Sheriff's Office, by state law, we're the top law enforcement agency in the county. But with that said, we like to form a good working relationship and partnerships with other local agencies. And in this case, Seattle PD and UW PD. With Seattle, we have a memo of understanding with them, basically stating that they get first right of refusal for any calls that happen, whether it's on a bus, in the streets, wherever. And part of that understanding as well is that the Metro Transit Police is an enhancement to their existing police services and not as a replacement or augmenting them. But we also try to handle our calls as best we can when it involves Metro. The issue is that we only have 77 officers, deputies, covering the entire county for a 24/7, 365-day period. Okay, so that's a little difficult. Most of our calls are downtown, so we staff the downtown area with 14 people at most, at max, Monday through Friday. And the north end and south end, they probably get 2 deputies each, and that's it. So that makes covering everything that we're responsible for kind of difficult. So that's why we ask for assistance sometimes. And then, as for the Bs, we are only one of 2 full-time bicycle units in the state, SPD being the other. All right, so how to report a theft of bicycle. I would say the most important thing to do, even before it gets stolen, is to get the serial number off the bike. We've had so many bikes that we've contacted or taken, or people have contacted that we know the bikes are stolen, but we can't prove it. And the big reason is we cannot find the serial number in the databases that we use because it just isn't there. Secondly, take pictures of your bicycle. Okay, if you have stickers on them, anything unique about the bicycle, take pictures of it. Don't rely on the stock image that you get off of a bicycle manufacturer website. That's not very helpful. It gives us a general idea of what bike is taken, but without specifics, it makes it much more difficult for us. On that note, if you can get the serial numbers off some of the parts, like a front shock, a derailleur, anything else, any of that information is very helpful for us to kind of determine whether the bicycle is stolen or not. And generally you can find those on the bottom brackets, stamped in other locations. The ones that are really difficult are the carbon fiber and composite ones, because most of the times those are just on stickers and serial numbers and they stick on the bottom bracket. And these bad guys, they just take those right off as soon as they steal that bike. And I think we've covered 3 or 4 of those where we just can't find the owner because there's nothing indicating who those belong to. No serial number, nothing. And then the other thing is, call us. You wouldn't believe the number of bikes that we've seen that they've just never been posted. They've never called us to report it stolen, nothing like that. And again, we know they're stolen. We have a very, very good inkling that they're stolen, but nothing. Lastly, and this is very helpful too, because we actually do use this pretty often, post your information. Post your stolen bike information on Bike Index or Project 529. Okay, because those 2 databases offer something that isn't available through the government databases.
Let me add one thing to that. If you purchase it from a bike shop, update your information at the bike shop, because you'd be surprised, we might find a sticker from the bike shop. We'll call the bike shop and say, oh yeah, that person left this number. We'll call the number you left at the bike shop, but you've moved 4 times since then. So if you purchase a bike from your local bike shop, make sure you update your information with them. It's just another tool for us if we find your bike that's been stolen, that we can get it back to you.
Okay, so some of the databases that we use. Kendra mentioned one earlier, Leads Online. It is a generalized database for all types of stolen stuff that pawn shops will enter or that we might enter into the system. One of the drawbacks is sometimes it doesn't list pictures or doesn't show pictures, right? So that's not very helpful sometimes. When it comes to pawn shops, it really depends on your jurisdiction's relationship with the pawn shops. For instance, CTAC actually requires all the pawn shops in their jurisdiction to enter in all the information on the items they take into the store. In unincorporated King County, we don't have that type of relationship because at least the city is able to mandate through municipal codes that they enter all this stuff in. On some cases, we've gotten a brush off by these pawn shops saying, hey, we'll go up to them and we'll have a pawn slip from their shop saying, hey, we have this item here that we found off of the suspect that, the stolen item is in your shop, and they told us to get lost, to put it nice and simply. In those cases, we've actually obtained search warrants for the pawn shop, shut down the entire pawn shop for a week, and inventoried everything they've had. And that kind of solved our problem with some of those pawn shops. They've been actually much more cooperative since then. Right? Okay, so the second database that we use is Access. It's a statewide database, holds information for multiple stolen items, and just items in general, okay? The big drawback is it doesn't hold any type of pictures again. So again, same drawback, but statewide access to every cop out there. Lastly, we use Bike Index. I have not used Project 529 yet, so I just heard about that one way I found out about the symposium. So Bike Index has the ability to post pictures online, and again, like I told you at the beginning, that's very, very helpful to have. If we were to make any suggestion for Bike Index, it would be to be able to post multiple pictures online. This way you can post a overall picture of your entire bike, maybe some unique features of it, like blinged out front forks or something like that.
We actually do support multiple pictures.
Oh, you do?
But yeah, I think the way you guys are accessing
And people are very
Okay.
visual, right?
Yeah.
Like visually,
Yes.
like you'll identify the bike. When you,
Very much so.
You can literally upload 100 pictures of your bike on the Bike Index.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
we have it on our phone, and we've only been getting one picture at a time, so I have not seen
What we
that.
will do is improve the interface so law enforcement partners can see multiple
like it.
images. Thank you.
And the second thing is be able to enter in multiple serial numbers on there. This way, if we don't see the one on the bike, maybe there's one on the front fork that'll match something in the database.
and it'll be undeniable when you do that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, like serial numbers.
It's hard to fake those. Next slide. All right, so where are most bikes stolen? Everywhere. There's no simple answer to that. I mean, it's thefts of opportunity most of the time. We have them stolen from racks, garages, parking garages in apartment complex, garages, public ones, left unlocked. Sometimes people just park them out there thinking they're going to go in for 5 minutes to do something, come back out, and their bikes are gone. Off the car racks, sometimes they disappear that way. The ones that we see fairly often, off the bus racks, on the buses. Okay, people will stick them up on the bus racks right there, go to the very back of the bus, come back out. Oh my gosh, my bike's gone. If you're going to put it on the bike rack, on the bus, sit in the front, keep an eye on it, please. The other thing is, another bit of advice, don't use those cable locks. They are cheap and very, very easy to get through. All right? Yeah. U-locks are the big actual chains are much better. Either one of those are much better than the cable locks. I've seen people cut through those little cable locks with just a pair of cable cutters, handheld cable cutters. They just saw right through that thing in probably about 20 seconds. It does not take much effort to get through those things. All right, next slide. All right, so we're covering stolen bicycles. Typically, we recover bicycles on the streets, because that's where we are. We're bicycling around, we see somebody on the street. When we see a $3,000 bike being pedaled by a person wearing tennis shoes, yet there's the 8-gear pedals on there, that's usually a clue, okay? The people that we recover them from sounds bad. It does sound bad, but they're typically drug users and sometimes homeless people. It's not to say that entire population is bad, but that's who we're recovering them from. Because even they need to get around town, and they want to do it efficiently, right? A lot of the time, some of the bikes that recover, the parts are just gone. All we're left with is the frame, and sometimes not even that. So again, if you get the serial number, enter it into Bike Index, call us, let us know. This way at least it's in 2 databases, and if you bought it from a reputable bike shop, let them know where your bike is at. Give them updated information so we can contact you somehow. So, on that note, these people that we run into, we'll talk to them, we'll check the serial number. If the serial number doesn't match, we'll just ask them some basic questions. Where'd you get the bike from? How much did you pay for it? How much do you think this bike costs? And lastly, and all that culminates to one question is, do you think this bike is stolen? And if they say, well, maybe, we'll actually follow up with the question of, hey, you mind if we just hold this bike for 60 days? We'll see if we can find the owner for it. And if so, we'll get it back to them. No harm, no foul. But if nobody claims it within 60 days, you can put in to get the bicycle back. And we have done that before. So just because it's not listed in any of these databases, as long as we have reasonable suspicion reasonable suspicion to know that the bike is stolen, then we will actually make some effort to get it back to the owner. But again, that doesn't always succeed.
Like Tom says, usually we'll stop the person and, well, where did you get this bike? Well, I bought it from my friend Joe. Oh, how much did you buy? How much did you pay for it? Oh, about 10 bucks. The bike's worth $3,000 and they paid $10 for it. It's the old saying, walks like a duck, talks like a duck, looks like a duck. It's probably gonna be a duck.
So if they don't understand the worth of the bike, that means that you have like reason to be suspicious?
Well, there's more follow-up. You know, like my partner said, if the person's wearing combat boots and they got a bike with egg beater pedals on it, and we ask them about the pedals, and they have no idea what an egg beater pedal is, and then they tell us that they spent 10 bucks and bought it from their buddy Joe, and we know by looking at the bike or doing some research online that it's a $3,000 bike, and they paid 10 bucks for it.
Okay, I guess that's a bit of a red alert.
We have to. We take multiple steps too. The description of the person, the type of bike, the area that they're in, what shoes they're wearing, does it match the pedal? Do they know what the bike is worth? How much do they pay for the bike? Where did they get it from?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors in it, right?
Yeah. All of this lends to, we're not just going to go up to somebody and just take their bike.
No.
Okay. We don't do that.
Even though, like, it might be suspicious that a certain person, like, you might want to approach them in a certain way, but, like, what is the evaluation that you have? Like, how do you determine these things?
Well, like my partner said, I mean...
I've been hearing you, too. Like, I'm just speaking aloud, like, whatever.
Well, yeah, say we work daylight hours. We work 10:30 to 8. But it doesn't mean we don't work. We sometimes work later. We've actually done stings where we have put a very high-end bicycle out, unlocked, at a bus stop.
Like, you baited it.
We baited it, yes. And we wait to see...
What was the outcome?
We have arrested several people, which has in turn led into more serious charges of drug possession, warrants. But again, to get back to your original question, 10:30 at night, you see a very high-end bicycle and some guy's walking it down the street wearing combat boots, a backpack, and a parka. Hey, you mind if I stop and talk to you for a minute? Yeah, okay, well, where did you get the bike? Again, well, I bought it from my friend Joe for 10 bucks, and it just leads into question. If the person doesn't want to talk to us, and I've got nothing more than some guy at 10:30 at night pushing a bicycle down the street, he's walking. I have no legal right to detain him. I can stop and talk to him, but as soon as he doesn't want to talk to me anymore, he's in the wind, unless I can build more probable cause to detain him to go further to find out where he got the bike. And it may turn out he is the owner. That has happened too.
That has happened. We've actually contacted a couple that were owners.
Yeah.
Okay, so what if you see your bike online? Kendra kind of already went into this. There's 3 ways that we go about this investigation. One of them is very ineffective, which is basically calling them going, hey, this is King County Sheriff's Office, Detective Lou, blah, 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 we'd like to know about the bike and where you got it. No, that usually doesn't work. Second one, get a search warrant. Again, that's very time consuming because you gotta write a search warrant for the website that you saw it from, like say Craigslist or OfferUp, and from there you either get an email address or a IP address, and then you have to write another search warrant for the service provider, which takes up even more time. So that's a very long process, and by that time the bike's already gone, right? So the most effective way that we have to do to recover bikes that are online now is to have our undercover unit give them a call, say, hey, we want to take a look at this bike to buy it. They'll set up a meet, go meet somebody, they'll bring the bike. While they're there, they'll identify themselves, check out the serial number of the bike. Hey, it's stolen, guess what, it's ours now, and we need to talk to you about your involvement and how you got this bike, whatever information that you know about. So that's the 3 ways of doing it. Last one is probably the most effective. So for the last couple years, we've probably recovered 44 bikes between our team. We returned 19 of them. 12 were returned via index. 7 of them by just kind of holding on to them, waiting, and somebody finally, calls the police and say, hey, this is my stolen bike and this is the serial number on it. Okay, and we get it back to them. 3 of those 44 that we took were returned to the people that we took it from. The other, the remainings, they're just sitting in the warehouse because they don't want to claim ownership of them because they know it's stolen. So right now, if I flip to the next slide.
Yep.
So right now, for unclaimed bikes, we storm in our primary warehouse just in South Seattle. It's just a big holding facility for evidence and bicycles. We've just come out with a new policy that we're going to hold on to these bikes for 60 days, and if nobody claims it, instead of continuing to hold on to it, we're just going to donate it to some type of charity, local charity in the area. And I think Brock gave me some good ones earlier that I didn't write down, sorry. So that's, we're going to discuss those charities and figure out which one to donate our bikes to. And that's about it. That concludes our presentation.
So, and do a little bit of a switch.
Yeah.
Bryan Hance of Bike Index.
Okay, show of hands. Who here has had a bike stolen? Keep them up if you've had multiple bikes stolen. Oh, good lord. How many of you got your bikes back? Show of hands. So we got 1, 2, 3. So that's a crap ratio, right? So that's why we're here. Next slide, please. So, we are the Bike Index. For those of you that haven't met us or haven't spoken to us yet, here's who we are and why we're here. I'm Bryan Hance. I'm a tech nerd. I've been a bike theft nerd for a very long time. I ran a site called Stolen Bike Registry from 2005 to 2014. Seth, Herr, the guy who is live streaming over here on the left, started the Bike Index in 2013. I always wanted to chase stolen bikes. I didn't really care about what happened to them before they were stolen. I think the chase is more fun. Seth was doing exactly the opposite. He was registering bikes beforehand. So chocolate and peanut butter, put them together, let's have one service. We merged in 2014 and it just exploded. We have 114,000 bikes on file. We have over 3,700 recoveries. We're working with over 380 different partner organizations all across the world. It's crazy. People in other countries email us all the time, want to know how they can have like their bike index for Germany. I would love to do it. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. We're extremely reachable people. We have to be for the work that we do. We have our local Twitter feed. How many people here on Twitter? Show of hands. How many people follow Stolen Bikes SEA on Twitter to keep an eye on the running list of bikes that have been stolen in the Seattle area? Thank you for doing that. If you're not already doing that, please follow Stolen Bikes SEA. Help us find a bunch of stolen bikes. So what do? It's real basic what we do. We index bikes. We put bikes into our index so we know who they belong to, both before and after they are stolen. Or if they're never stolen, you just want to have nice pictures of your bikes and a nice record of ownership. It's proving provenance. How do you prove that bike is yours if you don't carry your receipt around all the time? We know that the more that we index, the more we're going to recover. It's a very direct relationship. This is not rocket science, right? There's no magical database here. There's no crazy new technology. It's like write stuff down, give that stuff to people, and you're going to find more bikes. We have free search. We have free tools. We have what's an open API, which for the nerds in the room or the non-nerds in the room, that means other systems can talk to us, other computers and other systems out there. If they want to ask us about a bike or ask us about a serial number, they have a way to do that. And that's what fuels a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about here for a minute. We're the only system that does point-of-sale indexing. So they brought up earlier, how do you get people to register your bikes? You do it when you sell it to them. So we do point-of-sale indexing. When you buy a bike, when you roll it out of the shop, when you're running your credit card, that's golden for us. We take that as gospel and we register that bike to you at that time. Typically that system also has the serial number, the brand, all the information that we want. We also, the name Leads Online has been kicked around here a lot. They are a big search engine of other stolen stuff that many states, for those of you that don't know, I don't know if it was explained. If you run a pawn shop, if you run a sports resale store like Play It Against Sports, or one of these outfits that deals in recycled or upcycled goods, a lot of states and cities mandate that you have to use this system to make sure that it's not stolen. So they pick up our data through our API constantly. So if your bike is registered in Bike Index, it goes into this network called Leads Online, which has something absolutely bananas, like tens of thousands of shops across the US that use it. And we are also a nonprofit. Yay, go us. Next slide, please. So I get this question all the time, right? Like, why bikes? Why not chainsaws or stand-up paddle boards or iPods or literally any other consumer goods? It's because we love our damn bikes. And you have the value of your bike is so much more than the dollar amount, right? It's the bike that your dad gave you. It's the bike you did STP on. There's no real dollar amount that's going to get that bike back for you. I've talked to people that's like, it's not that I want my bike back, it's I need my bike back now. That's the sort of relationship we have with our bikes. The financial impact is crazy huge. It's severely underreported. It's in the triple-digit millions very easily. There's a lot more bikes on the road. A lot of cities have gotten very bike-friendly. The bikes are worth a lot more. Hence, there's a bigger black market for said bikes. Y'all know there's a pretty rampant online black market that fuels both theft and easy fencing for thieves, and that's one of the biggest problems that we're facing today. Yes, bike theft is also a lower enforcement priority. We totally get that. We know that a lot of the agencies that we deal with are stretched thin, so we try to augment that by letting the community take part in the problem by registering and searching for stolen bikes. The other weird problem, and this is another data nerd problem, a lot of these systems are balkanized, right? So you heard leads, you heard access, you heard, I could just barf out acronyms all night long. There's all these little repositories, these little silos of data that this city has access to, or this campus has access to, or this one agency has access to. They don't really talk to each other. So it's very, we see these bikes go across state lines and city lines all the time. It's very easy for thieves to rent a U-Haul, drive to a city, steal a bunch of bikes, drive them to cross state lines because they know there's no way that system is going to pick it up for 90 days and they can sell it. We solve that problem. We centralize this data. We take this data in from all these various sources and we give it out to all these various sources, and that's why we recover tons of bikes. This picture on the, go back if you can, hit the up key.
Yes.
Y'all seen this video? We talk about like stealthy thieves. This guy is angle grinding on downtown San Francisco. There's a YouTube video of this dude angle grinding this thing for about a minute and a half. Everybody walks by this guy, nobody says a word, and he walks away with the bike. That's sort of the worst of the worst, but that's kind of the problem that we're facing as well. Next slide. So who do we work with? Oh my God, we work with everybody. We're not picky. It's a huge mix of community, bike shops, cycling organizations, cops, police, universities, other anti-theft organizations like bicycle security advocates. We turn our countless daily theft victims into bike index users. People are saying, I'm pissed off, I want to do something. I say, okay, here's your homework. Get online, look on Craigslist, look on OfferUp, look on LetGo. Be vigilant. If you don't see yours, great, find somebody else's. That's how you help the bike index. We work with a lot of really region-specific websites and organizations. Seattle Bike Blog by Portland. There's 1 billion and one analogs of these ranging from Tucson to Cleveland to Utah. We work with all these organizations. We work with a lot of law enforcement. I won't list them all, but typically what we do is we get cops who ride bikes. We get cops who are try guys. We get cops who are bike officers, and that's our foot in the door, right? We get this one guy who he knows bikes and he may be riding a bike and he says, wow, I'm using this tool, I'm recovering a lot of bikes, I'm going to tell my other officers about it. And it spreads from there. So that is how we get our foot in the door with a lot of these. A lot of times we don't even approach them. They just hear about us and they use us and it's successful and they keep using us. Dollar amounts is one of the big, we could beat stats to death tonight. I'm not going to do that, but just one anecdotal slide. While I was putting this slide presentation together, I tracked the bikes that were coming in. And for those bikes where people had reported values. So these were the 10 bikes that came in as I was working on this slide presentation. It's just north of $14,000. That could be a little high, that could be a little low, but that's only 10 of about 40 bikes that got registered with us, stolen bikes that day. And keep in mind, that's only the bike. That's a lot of these are thefts from apartment buildings, thefts from cars, theft from businesses. There's other dollar amount values that victim is taking on during that robbery or that theft. We're only asking about the bike value. So it's a lot of money. And sadly, a lot of the victims are just eating this right out of pocket. A lot of people, bikes are kind of at that zone where you might not take an insurance claim on it. According to the numbers that we're getting, just north of 50% aren't going to use insurance on their stolen bike. They're just going to take that loss. More theft obviously equals less bikes. Again, no brainer. But less bikes equals more cars. And we ask people all the time, we run lots of surveys, like, hey, is this going to impact your ability to get to work? Yes. Are you going to drive a car more? Yes. Do you have any financial help with this? No. It sucks. A bike theft can really impact someone outside of, oh, hey, I don't get to ride my bike anymore, I'm very sad. Next slide. And as Brock brought up, I mean, the black market, it hurts so many people. Not only the theft victims, but black market bikes depress the actual legitimate market. Any bike shop that has to compete with a thief who can sell a bike for anything and make literally 100% profit online, anonymously, unregulated, they're screwed. They don't stand a chance. We know that there's a certain percentage, and again, I'm not going to beat stats to death tonight, but there's a certain percentage of people who, after the third or fourth bike, they say, you know what, F it, I'm not riding anymore. I ate $1,000 this month, I ate $1,000 that month, I ate $500 this month, I'm just going to get back in my car. That's not what we want. We also know that there's sort of the downside of the bell curve. If you buy a really expensive bike, it gets stolen. Maybe the next bike isn't so expensive, but it's still a pretty good bike. It gets stolen. That third bike is crap. And you're not going to go to a legitimate retailer and get it. You're going to go to Craigslist, you're going to go to one of these other online sites, and you're probably buying yet another stolen bike, sort of perpetuating the cycle. We don't want that either. And, again, it's been beaten to death. A lot of these bikes are tied to other crimes. They're just sort of quality of life crimes. A lot of these bikes, again, are home break-ins. They're businesses. They're, these apartment buildings in Seattle are getting hit left and right. A lot of them, obviously, are drug-related. Some of them are assault-related. The bike is typically, we're all about bikes and finding bikes, but we get bikes all the time where we recover the bike where people email us after the fact and say, hey, I didn't want to bring this up, but I got the crap beat out of me when that bike was stolen. Not only do I have my bike back, now we have a lead on the guys that beat the crap out of me and put me in the hospital. Next slide. So, quick stats, just for those of you that are wondering. 2014, we sort of kicked in late, so our numbers are kind of low. In 2015, we registered just north of 1,000 bikes. We recovered just about 132 of them. 2016, we recovered a little bit more, about 1,150. We recovered about 137 of those. Remember, these are only our numbers. These are not King County numbers. These are not Seattle numbers. These are not UW numbers. This is just the stuff that we are getting. But we're pretty proud of those 132 and 137. I'd like to break 200 this year, so give us a hand. Next slide. Again, the more you stick in the index, the more you're going to get back. The officer on the left was King County. I think she's moved on, or she's a different department now. The Seattle.gov article. Again, we get a lot of organic adoption across the agencies and people that use us. We reach out to as many people as we possibly can, but nothing makes my day more than a shop that calls me up and says, hey, I found this bike. And I say, man, I've never talked to you. Who are you? Seth has never met you. I've never met you. We've never emailed you. Like, no. All my writers know about you. Like, I heard about you in an article. That's what puts a smile on our face, that organic adoption, the fact that the word is spreading. So we need your help to do that. We don't tend to replace a lot of the systems that are out there. The officers were talking about, they obviously have their tools. We augment those systems that are out there. A lot of the time, we'll show up with 60% of the information, they'll bring the other 40. That's what it takes to get a bike back. Part of the problem with a lot of the systems out there are not that they're bad systems, it's just no one has access to them. I see some law enforcement databases that are great, but I can't see it. Bike shop can't see it, you guys can't see it. If you want to talk to them, you got to do it between 9 to 5, you have to get put on hold, you have to talk to the right officer, he may not be there that day. You're not really going to pick up the phone and try to make a 25-minute phone call when you're in the middle of a Craigslist transaction. Because we're mobile, because you can whip out your phone and use us at any time, any operating system, in front of a computer, on your phone, this is what lets the community jump in and say, no, I'm going to do it. We're going to register the bikes. We're going to look for the stolen bikes. We're going to find them. We're going to pull them back. That's why our numbers are so high. Next slide. We work with a lot of cops, and I love these pictures. We're real active on social media because a big part of the equation is showing everybody, like, this works, right? You've got officers out there that are looking. They're finding bikes all the time. You would normally never know this. Simplest thing, take a picture, throw it up there, say, hey, we got another one back today. It's great. This is like the crowd pleaser of crowd pleasers. One other stat that doesn't get reported, and I don't actually have the hard number, but a lot of these bikes are matched purely visually. There's no serial number on file. Because there's two red components on this bike, or maybe there's a scratch that the owner had taken a picture of, or maybe there's this one really weird configuration that they have. An officer is able to stand there and go, yep, that's it. Like, without a doubt, I'm looking at the same bike, give me that bike. Next slide. So if I could just hammer this home again, put it on Twitter, show people how things are being taken, show people days later how they're being brought back, show who's actually bringing them back. You had hard numbers, but at one point I just stopped counting how many bikes you guys got back, because it was just, like Tuesday you got one, Thursday you got one, Saturday you got one. It was just, chalk another one up. Please follow us again on Twitter if you're not following this feed. It's great. We're totally happy to work with UW now. Campuses are sort of coming out of the woodwork. A lot of campuses run their own little baby registries, but again, they suffer from the same problems. They are balkanized, only campus have access to them. They're sort of poorly implemented. So we're elated to have UW on board and many, many schools behind them. Next slide. Bike shops, oh my God. One of the biggest helps that we've ever gotten. I cannot overstate how big of a role bike shops play in this entire equation. We index at the time of sale. We have a lot of bike shops that will index at the time of service. Totally free, we're not charging anything. Just say, hey, I don't think your bike's in the index. Do you guys want us to slap a sticker on it, put it in the database? It'll take 10 seconds. They've already got your information typically because you're doing a transaction. A lot of bike shops will do serial checks during suspect interactions. We've had thieves that are able to boost bikes off the back of cars except for one wheel. So there's a thief walking in with a road bike minus a wheel on the back, and the guy behind the counter just says, nope, I'm not going to check this out right now. And because the owner was fast enough to register the thing on the bike index, they're able to pull it. And again, this is free. We're not charging for this. We charge zero, zilch, nada, nothing. We just want bike shops to do this. This is a tool that we think needs to exist, so we built it and we promote it. There's about a dozen Seattle shops using bike index at last count, plus one. We just hooked Metier up to today. We also have a lot of load check options for maybe shops that aren't really computerized or they don't have point of sale systems. If you're a bike shop or you know a bike shop that's not using us, drop us a line. We have stuff for them. For those of you that actually are in the bike shop community here in Seattle, thank you so much. The daily tips and the daily emails and the daily serial searches, keep up the good work. Next slide. We have a lot of other crazy advanced partnerships. So a long time ago I mentioned our API. It lets other computers and computer nerds talk to us. There's a verified online marketplace called Perfecto.bike that actually verifies the legitimacy of the bike that's being sold. Leads Online, I've mentioned them a million times, but we're really happy that they tap into us. The big problem with Leads, the whole reason we got involved with them in the first place is that I break into your house on a Monday, you fill out all your paperwork, and it goes into this bucket. It may sit in that bucket for 60 days. It may not actually get in front of a cop in time for someone who cares to actually do something about it. And by the time it gets to Leads, it's been like 90 days. Meanwhile, pawn shops only have to hold stuff for 30 days. So we were seeing tons of bikes blow through the pawn shop system. So we approached Leads and just said, hey, pick up our data constantly. Every hour on the hour, do it. And that's what they do. So it's constantly updated, it's constantly refreshed. It's not dependent on the sort of paper trail to catch up with the theft. We do actually offer bulk serial searches for law enforcement. I'll send you the link. So if you want to run 50, 100, 5,000 serials at once, you copy paste and it just kicks them back which ones that we actually know about them. San Francisco does that with us. Periodically their warehouse guys will just send us an Excel sheet and we'll just blow it in for them. And again, we do a lot of this for free. We're a member of many task force groups, bike theft task force groups, Portland, of course, being the first one. We're seeing a lot of similar groups pop up in different places. There's a lot of interest from a lot of cities and a lot of quarters on like, okay, we're a bike-friendly city, we have a great community, what the hell do we do to stop bike theft? And we see you've got this group, can we take your playbook, please? Next slide. And I couldn't do a public announcement, I couldn't do a PowerPoint presentation without announcing a new partner. But we have a new partner, they're called Verifier. This is crazy technology that I'm pretty stoked about. It comes from the pharmaceutical industry. Y'all have pets, you know how you can ship your pet? Take your pet to the vet, stick it in there, they can scan it. This is basically that, but the secret sauce to this is they can actually bake it into the frame. This is not an adhesive, this is not a stick-on, this is not an additive, this is baked, this is in the hardware, this is in the carbon, this is in the metal. You can't remove the thing without physically damaging and devaluing the thing that you're trying to sell or steal. It's NFC, near field, so you take your phone and go like this, and that's how it scans. Again, I've been waiting for this for a really long time. A lot of the solutions on the market are not as good or nearly as amazing as this. I can't wait to see this hit the market, and they're basically getting out the gate in 2017. Mark that name. So they're going to bring this amazing chip tracking technology. We're going to bring the ownership data and the registration, search, and recovery. And this is all because we're computer nerds. We have an API that their system can talk to. I can't say much more about it right now, but mark that name in your memory. You'll be hearing about it in some major manufacturers hopefully pretty soon. And again, I mean, it's obviously very tiny. It's flexible. This is just one of the iterations of the product comes in. Next slide. And that is it. I'm Bryan at bikeindex.org. Seriously, do not hesitate to contact me. Everybody in this room, if you have a question, if you have a partner, if you know somebody that wants to work with us, seriously, take that down and drop us a line. We would absolutely love to hear from you guys. Thanks.
Yeah, but how much is that tracking? Like which logs?
Perfect, thank you, Bryan. I'm going to conclude with some policy and funding solutions that are just kind of ideas at this point that we're hoping that City Council and others are willing to pick up. Okay, so let's see here. I think Bryan's on the wrong side of the... So there's three major buckets of policy ideas. The first of which is to vaccinate your bikes. So I think everybody know what vaccination is. If we can go to the next slide real quick. There are approximately 350,000 to 500,000 bikes here in Seattle. That is based on the fact that it's reported that 50 to 71% of the people in this city say they have access to a bike in the place. And so that's a lot of bikes. That value, if there's an estimate that the average value of a bike is about $300, so that would be $150 million worth of bikes. It's something worth protecting. If we can go to the next slide. So like any immunization against a disease, we do need to hit a critical mass of indexing bikes in order to make it so risky for a thief that they just won't do it. And so how do we do it? We have some ideas. The first of which is to have bike shops always, when selling a bike, put it in an index, an online index. And so the key advantage there is that every new bike from here on out would be in the system. Everything about indexing that we're trying to do is to lower the barriers to actually having the bike listed, and this dramatically lowers that barrier in a very important way. And so this is the key one. The next is bikes are sold through other ways, and it's important to be able to have a system that works for that. A lot of bikes are going through Craigslist and OfferUp and other sites, and like Let Go, Facebook, the marketplace, requiring them to have a field so that way a buyer has the option or a seller has an option of putting in a serial code number or say bike indexes ID code into that field would help create a healthier market, because then the buyer will be expecting it and they can track it against bike index. And so we think that's an important next step. Another idea is we have lots of great big events that have thousands of registrants that go through them that have bikes. So if we could have the Emerald City Bike Ride, which might have 10,000 people ride in it in a couple weeks, if there was a field that was similar to like Craigslist, where the registrant had to put in their code, at least people would be introduced to the idea of indexing up front. And maybe they want to do it, and there wouldn't be a very good way of tracking it, but at least they'd be introduced to the idea. The final thing is to do more checking of bikes on indexes when they're being maintained at bike shops, so just encouraging that as much as possible. The second idea, the second big bucket, is to improve police investigations. I don't know, so a lot of you have had bikes stolen, right? And how many of you have had them stolen in Seattle? A few? So, in Seattle, you have, the first thing that happens when you have it stolen, well, first you say a few cuss words, and then you have to figure out how to report it to the police. There is the online reporting system for things under $500, and then you call your local precinct for things over $500. And that's a pretty big barrier for figuring out where to go, and I have to say I've never seen anything reported online actually investigated and recovered. So I'm glad most things are probably reported to a precinct. What happens then is if the police officer who is in your precinct will write a report, you get a case number, and then it's logged, but there's not a lot more done by SPD. If you get a lead, like you see something online, then you need to report that back to the police so they can update that case file. If you want to get a subpoena or need to get a subpoena because you see a seller, you will need to report that to them, and we've already gone over the complexity of that, but the officer has to approve it, they have to get approval from their boss, they have to get approval from a judge, and then there might be multiple subpoenas that you need to get an ID, all of which takes longer than a sale on OfferUp. So that's not a very good system. And then there's the problem of like just once you are trying to track the bike, getting an officer to help you do that. And so all of that's really complex. So we think a better system would be to have a single police officer be responsible for collecting the reports in the city. And why we think that makes sense is, like I mentioned at the very beginning, bike theft is 3.1% of all crimes. Out of the police officers, if we had a proportionate number of people, of officers working on this, that would be 45 officers working on bike theft. We're not expecting 45 officers to work on bike theft, but we think one should, and that person can coordinate the thefts between the precincts, between the major crimes division, if there's drugs involved, and those sorts of things. And they can build relationships with the King County Sheriff's Office, with UWPD, and help coordinate that work throughout. And then, of course, working with bike shops and pawn shops and the such. Finally, so funding. We know that if we were to require bike shops to do this work or have more bike shops to do this work, it's an impact. Many bike shops operate at a very thin margin, so having some assistance for those bike shops to set up like a Lightspeed point of sale integration system that Bike Index has, or just to have the manual registration or indexing of bikes would be really helpful. So to have some funding to help do that. Be able to educate bicycle owners on how to index their bikes. I think that we should treat indexing bikes a little bit like vaccination, in that we have an annual push to vaccinate against bike theft like we do against the seasonal flu. So we have the annual push. Maybe we do it in May or June when people are starting to ride a bike. And the final thing is these online indexes provide a real value to the community. And right now they're doing it for free, but it costs money to have servers running, and it costs staff time. I mean, right now it's volunteer staff time, but there's a real value to the Seattle Police Department, to the King County Sheriff's Office, for the work that the volunteers do within indexing organizations to help track down bikes. And so providing some of that back-end resources is key, even if it's not everything that it needs to be. So those are the three big things, and then we go to the list. I have a comparison, but I think we should just flip to the next and go into Q&A for the last 20-25 minutes. And then if you have questions, we would appreciate you writing them down on the index cards. The white ones the colored ones back there, so we know the difference. And there are a bunch of pins, I think, back there as well. And then Amy Gore, who's a legislative assistant to Councilmember Rob Johnson, will be facilitating this. So can I have the panelists up here? So Bryan, Seth, and Amy is going to be running the show here, so she'll ask some questions, and then if you have additional questions, she'll take your index cards and fill them out.
Hi, good evening. My name is Amy, and I heard there are a lot of different types of folks here. Maybe some bike shop owners, maybe some enthusiasts, other folks. I was wondering, by show of hands, does anybody here own a bike shop? All right. Is everybody here a bicycle enthusiast? Okay, fantastic. All right, so I was wondering, I believe from, yes.
Anybody here from OfferUp?
Awesome. Let's see, so one of the questions, I believe, from the King County Sheriff's Office, we heard a little bit about recovery and how many of those bikes are eventually returned to owners. And I was wondering, Kendra, if you had any statistics about when you recover bikes, how many actually get returned to folks? Is it easier if you're a college campus to get the word out that you've got a recovered bike?
I don't think it's necessarily easier. We still have the same problem of getting people to actually register their bikes the same way that the rest of the city does in general. It just seems to be a big problem, and I think part of the problem that we have is with especially college students, they don't necessarily want to take that time they don't want to take the time to go ahead and register that bike when they should be registering that bike.
Let's see, my second question is for Bryan at Bike Index, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the Lightspeed system for bike shop owners. How do you get that set up? If you aren't going to get that set up for whatever reason, are there other ways that it makes it easy to get bikes indexed for folks?
The Lightspeed integration works by checking the sales that the bike shop does and then registering the bike to the customer that bought the bike. It takes less than 5 minutes to set up. I set it up here this afternoon, and every bike that's sold is registered. It's pretty easy.
Let's see, another question I have for Brock is, I think you mentioned a lot of policy ideas, and it seems like there's a pretty big difference between folks who are really clued into the bike community and are participating in a lot of these types of activities, and your casual, maybe lower cost bike folks. And I was wondering if anybody here has any ideas about ways that we can do a better job of getting a message out to those folks about these types of resources, that even though they might not have a high price bike, as you mentioned before, it's expensive to them. And so how do we make sure that they know that these resources exist and can take advantage of something like this in terms of community outreach?
So I think there's a couple of things. First, having registration as part of point of sale for all retailers would mean all bikes, regardless of their value, would get registered. And so, if it was bought at Walmart, it would still be on the system. If it was at a small retail shop, it would still be on the system. So that's one way. And then we do have a lot of good partners that specifically are working to increase cycling among low-income populations. And so, Bikeworks, it comes to mind as an organization that's specifically focused on that, as well as, we have bike shops that are specifically targeted towards lower value bikes and that are being ridden by lower income folks. And so I think those are good entry points for that conversation.
Also, if you want to hand me those files, or do you want to ask one? Do you want to ask and answer? We'll do this one. How is Bike Index funded? How do you make your money?
Yeah, we get this one a lot. Thanks for asking that one. So we are a nonprofit now. That's pretty great. It opens up a lot of doors to corporate giving. It opens up a lot of doors to deductible giving. We're not shy. I mean, when we recover somebody's $6,000 bike, I'm not shy about hitting that person up saying, "Hey, we just did you a huge favor, really." We recommend 10%, but I take 5%. We do, we work with a lot of partners in the community who are also, much like Brock, advocating for people to step up and actually jump into our system and use the system, and also support us financially or with material or through PR. Right now, we're a very lean organization, right? We're about a half dozen people. Seth and I are here right now. There's others scattered throughout. Servers are indeed expensive, but they're not a killer resource. It's basically time. And bike people, you work on something you're passionate about, you're not really going to bill for it. You just need the system to exist. So we do, we eat a lot of hours on our own just because we need this to work, and we want this to work, and we see how effective it is. We hit up every single point of contact that ever touches base with us for a little bit of donation. We're approaching a number of larger entities that may have a vested interest in helping initiatives like ours out, and through other corporate partnerships like some of the other technology companies that I mentioned. But right now, honestly, it's people like you in this room. 5, 10, 20 bucks, you wouldn't believe how much, 20 bucks buys us a lot of server time, and a lot of server time recovers a lot of bikes. So if I can say, donate. Yeah, exactly. So that's a very long answer to a very short question. Thank you for bearing with me. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, do we interface with some of the residential communities? Next door was the name that she had just thrown out, and I think there's a couple similar. Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of actual cities that have next door partnerships. We do. We actually get a ton of tips from next door. We get a lot of sightings, we get a lot of reports, we get a lot of people that route break-in. Next door is extremely crime heavy, for better or for worse. Lost pets and crime are like 50% of my next door feed. Maybe it's the pets that are doing the crime. I mean, the problem with Nextdoor is if I'm not a member of that neighborhood, I cannot see that post. There's a lot of technical problems where someone says, "Oh, my neighbor Bob, you know Bob." Bob's like, "Oh, I don't know Bob. I'm not in your neighborhood. You sent me a link which I literally have no ability to view." We've spoken to them in the past, and I hope that that's a relationship that we build up in the future. But it's anywhere there's a large mass of people that are concerned about things happening in their community, crime or cycling or otherwise, we've had a conversation with them at one point, either an email or a point of contact. But yeah, I know that a lot of cities have Nextdoor has a formal program where cities can actually do city communications through Nextdoor. They can municipal, fire warnings and such like that. I would love to work us into some sort of role like that, but right now it's just anecdotal. So thanks.
All right, we have a question for OfferUp. Do you mind coming up and answering the question? Okay, so the question is, can you speak to the status of the request to track or publish serial numbers?
Yes, I can. So you can put your serial number in your description right now on OfferUp. There's absolutely nothing stopping anybody from putting it in. So it's now. It's available. What's that? Is there a prompt? There is a description box, which is where you can put any information you want, including your serial number. So we've been tracking people who voluntarily put those serial numbers in as a way to understand demand. It's not significant, as you can imagine. So the second part of the conversation, and partially why we're here, is that we get blamed because we don't force people to do that, and that somehow is our fault or our responsibility. We're here to sort of figure out creative ways to educate our very large population of users that would be a great idea, and that they should do that. There's lots of things that I think we can do that are steps before requiring people to enter information that would potentially make them just go somewhere else that's easier. So we are here to have a conversation about that. But the point is, you can do it right now, so it doesn't stop you. What's that?
Do you want the microphone?
So, like I just said, we can add information. I'd be happy to have the conversation about making people more aware of what they could do to make their listings better. A prompt, whatever that is.
For any bicycle-related thing, just be like, enter your serial number.
I mean, I love the product planning conversation. We can do all that right now, but the point is, yeah, we can. We should talk about that.
Next question is, and this is a audience member question, is anyone working with bike manufacturers to have them enter or share bike info before sale, then it's fast to add the buyer info?
I'll just. That's okay.
So, I mean, I think there's two things to be said. First, the most important transaction at which to have the registration happen is at the point of sale to the bicyclist, because that is when the registration is, and bikes are built up in the shop. And so we want that to be the case. Now, I am really excited about the idea of having a tag built into the bike, and I think once that tag is built into the bike, then you have to start to have a conversation about having it tracked from the manufacturer forward, and so I'm going to hand it over to Bryan for that.
Which is funny, that's literally what that technology was created to do. Like again, I mentioned briefly that it came from the pharmaceutical industry, where they're tracking shipments to protect them against counterfeiting and dilution and whatnot. So it's a bit of a different use, but yes. But we have had contacts with major manufacturers for a long time, and everything from what's a better tagging serial technology to how do we get this number that exists in our supply chain, that exists in these 15 different systems. They know exactly which truck that bike is on, but they do nothing with that data after the fact once it's sold to deal with theft. Which I think is a shame. There's a lot of major manufacturers that do product registration when you buy the bike and you send in your warranty card, and that just goes into a bucket, and that goes nowhere. There's probably a warehouse out back where they have large hamsters that live in a giant pile of registration cards. They're sitting on a mountain of data that could be used for theft and recovery, and they basically use it for marketing. So it's an ongoing conversation. It's hard to scale up that fast, but I would absolutely love to see manufacturers get more involved with this process. Of course, as a manufacturer, it's probably where it's like, well, I've sold the bike. What do I care? What's my piece, right? What's my, other than a little bit of customer service, why do I care about? Yeah, like what do I? It's my bottom line is fine. What do I care about theft? Well, no, it's the community. It's the fact that the theft contributes to other crimes. The fact that these thefts are often tied to other problems. Again, a long answer to a short question. I'll shut up. Thank you.
All right, great. So if you have your bike listed on Bike Index, should you register it on Project 529 also?
Couldn't hurt, but we find more bikes.
What is King County's perspective on that?
Another perspective.
My really short answer is yes.
So actually you don't need to, because Project 529 takes all of our bikes and puts them in their system. So if you register on Bike Index, you're on both systems, so you're fine.
Are you guys cross-referenced with National Bike Rail?
Data goes one way. Again, we're the only one with an open API right now. We encourage others to do the same.
Okay. Let's see, and I think this is also for maybe our law enforcement friends. We have two kind of related questions. One is, can you talk a little bit about the best way to use U-Lock? And then also a question, would a self-locking bike rack, including the frame and wheel, be a good thing? Could it be a better option than a user-provided lock?
Can I see what's All right. The best way to use a U-Lock. Definitely loop it through the front tire and the frame. It's the best way, as well as the rack that you're locking into. Definitely do not leave it there for a long time though, because we've seen bikes that have been left there overnight. Next thing you know, we see the front tire missing, the back tire missing, the chains missing, and it just slowly disappears, and all you're left with is a frame. Second question, would a self-locking bike rack be a good thing? Yes, it would be a good thing if the locking mechanism is properly built, because a lot of locking mechanisms that we see are just pull-out cables that wrap around the frame. Like I was telling you before, they're easy to just snip right off. Could it be a better option than a user-provided lock? That right now is hard for me to answer, because that depends on what the manufacturer decides to use as their locking mechanism for the bike racks. There are some that fold over the front tire that seem fairly sturdy, but again, pop off the front tire and you just take the rest of the bike. So it really depends on the rack itself and what style it is and what the locking mechanism is. So I'm sorry, I really don't have a good answer for that one.
So the other thing that Bicycle Security Advocates works on is bike parking, and there's a bike rack manufacturer right here. So the lock that you should use is a U-Lock. You should use a high quality one. I recommend the Kryptonite series locks altogether, but it really depends on the bike that you own. And so this is why a self-locking bike rack doesn't really work very well, is there's lots of different bikes. It is much better to have one style of rack that can work for the vast majority of bikes, and then for you to choose your own lock that works for you. And you know, every lock has a purpose to some extent, I suppose. There was an event ride where I did not carry a lock, and I wish I had a cable lock at a minimum, because then I would have used it and saved my bike from being stolen the second time. So I think there is a use for every lock. You just need to know what that use is. I recommend using a U-lock and locking your most expensive wheel. Sometimes for me, that's my front wheel. Sometimes it's the back wheel. If you don't care about which wheel gets stolen, I recommend the front wheel because then it's more stable on the rack because your wheel can move around. So that's my recommendation.
Great. Really briefly, I just want to point out that one of our favorite bike advocates, Bryan, has arrived. And so I was going to see if you wanted to just come up really quickly and speak for just a second. We're about out of time, but I would love to hear, I know that Brock gave you some great ideas today at committee about kind of policy perspectives about some things that we could be doing. And I would love to hear your perspective about what we can be doing both as a city and as a bike community to really help everybody keep and recover their bikes.
I want to, first of all, thank you all for the work you do at both Bike Index, and I know folks from Project 529 are here also. I want to thank Brock, your advocacy, and unfortunately we've been having conversations like this for a number of years. I think since your bike was stolen in RSVP a couple of summers ago. There's a lot more we can do, and I share the frustration. I think I've had 4 bikes stolen in the last 2 years. The goal here is to get leaders in the city, both folks at the police department and other police departments around the area, elected officials, community members, bike shops, and organizations like yours to sit down and come up with a strategy to do a better job. There are tools out there that exist. We don't have anything that's perfect yet, but we can do a lot better than we're doing today. And thanks to the organization today, we had Seattle Police Department at the table committed to do that. I want to say thanks to the King County Sheriff's Office for your guys' work too. And my commitment is that we'll sit down and start convening some stakeholder meetings and try to come up with a path forward, looking to what other cities are doing, what other jurisdictions are doing, looking to where the technology is. You know, Seattle's a city that should have the best technology for solving bike theft as possible. And so let's get that.
And I'll let Rob say a few words to wrap up.
Perfect. Thank you, Councilmember Bryan. This would not have happened without Mike getting us before his committee earlier today and getting Bryan and Seth up here, so we really appreciate that. I want to do a quick thank you to all of our co-sponsors. So Bryan, can you flip to that slide real quick? So we can...
Is it forward or back?
I want to make sure to hit everybody. So Bike Index, Cascade Bicycle Club, Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance, Sportworks, Metier, Seattle Bike Blog, Seattle Neighbor Greenways, Sportworks, and TiGr Lock, all of which help make this happen. So I really appreciate everybody being able to do that. I thank you for being here. I know it didn't seem like all of the bike shops that had RSVP came here, but I really appreciate that they were interested. Some 12 bike shops said that they were interested and were going to be here, and I am just really appreciative of that interest. I am really appreciative of OfferUp for being here, of Project 529, of Bike Index. The community of people who care about this are here, and I'm hoping that this conversation continues with a task force or a committee with concrete recommendations and adoption soon. I really appreciate it. Yes. So thank you. It is 8 o'clock. Feel free to finish your beers, but we are done with the panel discussion, so feel free to mingle, and then the shop officially closes, but feel free to hang out.